Hello friends of the program. Today I want to invite you to talk to you about the color of the red coat in the horses that many times we call them Moorish horses. But the denomination that is for them is the red horse. The coat of the horses, and the red Mares, in all the breeds from this stud farm. The San Esteban stud farm, one of the great stud farms in Colombia and the oldest with this specimen. The Catalonian, that we are going to start here in the San Esteban stud farm, and I hope we enjoy all the images we are going to have. Today we are going to deal with the coat, and many of us say the colors of the horses or of the bovines or of all the species that are in the written treatise as coat. But today we are going to concentrate and to focus on the color or the coat that many call in Colombia as moros, but the moro is a specific color. The moro is one within the tonalities that can exist in the horses, and the tordo is a color that has many variations because this is the form that is being diluted. It is turning to a white, or to a tordillo. That is the name given when the horse is already at an age that enter, as we are going to see in the images more in front of the tordos horses, as we see in this beautiful specimen of the purebred Spanish horse breeding farm of San Esteban. That with a very special thanks, we are showing you a beautiful specimen, the Catalan, a horse that Padria there. This phase is called tordo rodado, tordo pataconiado, or tordo pesatado. Those words come from the Spanish that were from them that brought us the denominations the peseta and the patacon. We imagine that it can a patacon of banana, but the patacon also was a coin like the peseta, a silver coin. Then the patacon also figures for that and the tordo rodado. Here we see a mare that, as we know that in the thrushes there is an influence of black, chestnut and sorrel. This is a mare with an influence of a chestnut brown, and we are going to see how what we were saying and what is written in the book that we wrote, the horses and their basic colors and others, how they begin to discolor. First, the bristle tips on the tail. Remember that in the tail are bristles and in the nape are the mane. So this mare comes and is very young. She is a young mare there in all her conditions. It can present different, according to the feeding, to the sun, to the care that is taken of the horses, to the mares, to all the equines, and these variants have a lot of influence. This influences the feeding, the sun, the sunshine, the rain in the paddock, and we also see how she begins to show some discoloration in her mane. As we are going to see later on, this mare has a star because let's remember that when she has points that star, we are going to see that later on as well. But when she becomes torda or tordilla complete white, those spots disappear on the face or on the extremities, front or hind. Those whites disappear, which are present when they are born in that dark coat, as all the tordos are born. And as we saw in the previous arrival, this is another mare that also comes from the brown, influencing the brown. But this is a mare that also presents herself genetically and according to her forms of management. Not everything corresponds to an age. As we have already said, all those external factors have a great influence. so this is a mare that is also a little more advanced in age. A mare more or less 4 years old, and we are already beginning to notice. And in the tail from the middle, down, and above all, in the short hairs of the body, in that many people confuse or name it many times as rosillo. But rosillo is a very defined color, as we will discuss later when we will see the rosillos also that are influenced by the black, chestnut and sorrel, and many times incredibly, as we said in previous programs, of the basifuego, which is a special color, a very special color, the basifuego zeno. This is a mare whose tone is already advancing to become a very white tordilla. A mare that can be called entre peladas, tordo entre pelado, because there is already a discoloration throughout her body in the short hairs, which is marking where she is going to go. Possibly this mare, as she began with this mark of discoloration, will be a white tordilla pupila, a very white tordilla without what we are going to see later on, without being crushed, although she has the traces and carries traces of the color and the influence of the brown coat. She is a mare that is starting, and as we said, or as we were saying, that mare of the Domecq that says that they are presented. That never fails, because these horses are born of a very dark coat, and it could be called a black coat when the foals are born. It is very nice to see some mares foaled, already white tordillas aged 17, 15, 20 years, all dragging black offspring. In foals when they are 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, and the first thing they begin to show in their discoloration to realize where they are going, around the eye, is the first thing that begins to show how he was going to refer to the Domecq. Mare, Alvaro, the old Alvaro. And, he said that it almost never fails for one to orient oneself towards where the color of the black horses goes. That stain that we see in the hand, or that trace that we see in the hand, also disappears, and to refer how it has to be registered in his pedigree, in his passport, in his papers of the mare or the horse, later to corroborate that if he had the right leg or the left hand or some, or the face with stains or with white, then one has to wet it so that right there one can determine where the mark and the white stains go to. Here we have another mare at a more advanced age of 8 to 10 years old. A mare with a pataconada or tordo pataconada, which the last thing that is discoloring is her legs and shoulders. And this mare already has another type of tonality, because she has been very firm in her mane. But nevertheless, the tail, which is one of the indicators, the bristles of the tail. A mare that has the bristles from the middle of the tail down, and they also start very close to the rump with their hair. Discoloration, the tail, which is one of the indicators, the bristles of the tail. However, they present a very significant discoloration in their shoulders, in their back, in all their loins according to their age, and nevertheless presenting, according to their care and everything, the term rodado, taconito, or pesatito. As we have already said, it is a mare that also begins to present, because she comes from the black origin. Then she begins to present in her face the first indications of atrachars. It is called atracado, although it corresponds to the 3 colors, black and chestnut and sorrel. It is called atracado, as we will see later, and the atricados in the color that comes from the black, are called atricados in powder. In the chestnut they are called atricados vinous, and in the sorrels they are called in the atricado rosillo. But not of the dew of the rosillos but of the pink color of the reddish color. Which is what they present as we see here, that is at this moment, that is being shown on the back of the mare's leg is called petercle, or as if they had thrown a few pebbles of lime, and that many times when they present this tonality on the loins and on the leg they are called estaninos, tordo estanino. Which is how in reality, where the term tordo comes from, because in Spain it is called the starling. It is called tordo, but if we were not etymologically searching, it would be for the bird that is the starling, in which the Spaniards call it tordo. To that bird, here we can already see a mare already trucata, because it is a mare of 16, 18 years old, and it is a very beautiful trucado that comes from the red into chestnut, because they can inherit, as we already know and we had seen in the other chestnuts, as we are going to see that the chestnuts have many tonalities in that tonality, and this one comes from a red into approaching the sorrel, so it is called a drizzled chestnut, because the freckles are in the form of little stripes, in the form of drizzle, elongated. That is the characteristic of this atricado in drizzle, because there are other atricados, very concretely rounded freckles that we could call them, of the forms of atrichars, as many of you friends of the program have known horses, and that in some colloquial or Creole terms, we call them rucios, those horses, but those terms are valid. This mare, who is already older, has a mane that we could call almost crystalline, very white, because a 20-year-old mare, even though she comes with influences, as we know that the Spanish breed, as well as many North African horses that we have, descendants of them, and many Arabian horses and many horses from the French Camargue and many Lusitano horses as well. Influence that was the contribution of this, of that coat to those Iberian horses. There are many horses and many breeds that have that touch or that atavistic reminiscence of the coats in the horses where they come from. So this mare is very common in the mares that are born very black, or the horses that are born very black. They do not become very black, they are very white, and we are going to see it later. That is why they are called tordillos in white, and it is a false white like the people, because the white horses are a very special thing. As we remember in the book that is described by Don Pedro Aguilar, and the author of the great Bible of the colors and the coats of the horses. He could not know horses that were born white, and we had the example there in the other breeding farm in the Hameda that there is a mare that carries that genetics, and her offspring are born white from the time they are small, but with completely pigmented skin, which is very different from all the Perlinos, all the Isabelinos, to all the Isabelos, and to all those that are albinoids that carry a very marked genetics, and with their coat very strengthened in the pigment of the melanin. It is already an atricado that is very different to the tordillos that end in white. To this is that we were referring when it carries also of an origin or of an inheritance, or of an atavistic of chestnut, almost sano, of a chestnut, reddish of a chestnut as you can call it, and it appears in the book of the horses, and its basic colors and others, that appear very specified where they come from and how these forms of presentation in the atracados originate and where the colors come from and also how we call the colors colloquially or by the geo-synonyms, that is how it is called in the south of the country, in the east of the country, in these regions that we have in Colombia. The Mexicans, the Brazilians, the Argentinians, the Spaniards are the ones who have the colors. The Argentinians, the Spaniards are very Castilian, very given to call the colors as they have always been called in Spain. They were the ones who taught us and brought us to learn about colors. That is why when we talked about the color grullo in the chestnut trees, we do not know grula here, but in Spain, yes, then this color is called grullo. But here we have called it aratonado or cenizo or pavo. This is a horse, a specimen, already a specimen of 20-something years. The same as this mare, a beautiful mare from the stud of Antonio Posada, there in the east of Antioquia in Rio Negro. She is an atracada, a great mare, a very beautiful mare that nevertheless was atracada when she was very young. Because the mane that the mare has does not say that she is still very young, and there are some that get ahead of her age. There are others that take longer to be in those terms of atracado. This atracado that many times is called mosquedo, it is not mosquedo. But the people and many of us call a mare a mosquedo callus, but no. The mosquedo we are going to see now in the next pictures for you to see, friends of the program, that the trout is very close, the freckles and the fly horses are very scarce. The real fly horse is a. Here we see how the mare first discolored her tail bristles, that the manes as we are going to see are influenced by many factors as we have already said. External factors, care factors, feeding factors for all the layers. The colors, the rolling, because not only the thrushes have their peseta, their rolling or their pataconiado, and it can occur in many layers. The colors according to the care they have. Here we see for example how the manes cover that part of the neck where the sun and the serene has not helped to deteriorate. Then underneath those manes, what is presented on the flanks, on the leg, on the shoulder blade, on the loins, of the mare that is presented, there as we see that it is the first thing that begins to discolor. And as we were saying about the flies or the mosquedos, horses are very scarce. The mares and the mosquedo horses, this one is a real mosquedo horse. This horse, it is favor na horse the pure lipizano. There we see how in spite of having discolored so much you can see the macules and the bemba in white, and those flies have to be by hand. A hand corresponds to 10 centimeters, not a quarter. The hand is the closed fist that more or less corresponds to the minute, and as it has been called a horse of 15 hands is a horse of 1 with 50. A horse of 14 hands and a half is a horse of 1.45. A horse of 16 hands is a horse of 1.60. This horse is pure Pisan Favorilli, bred by Dr. Sergio Restrepo, breeder of Arabian and Lipizan horses in Colombia. Is a great horse, is a novelty. The beauty of this mosquedo, that this horse has. It is said that the flies must be at least at hand so that it does not appear atracado, but many times there is a very nice phenomenon that within the atracados in chestnut sorrels the flies appear on top of the atracado. Is also very scarce, as we are going to present it later, or we are going to see it then. This is a horse that presents its flies, and not as we often call the atracado horses we call mosquedo, no. it is an atricado horse or rucio as it is called in many regions of the country, and as we call them, and also when they are called moros. That is all respectable, but all these technical denominations that are found in the book The Horses and their basic colors and others, is so that when we are reading some book, some novel, some very academic book, we know what it refers to, because they are not going to name the horses as we name them in the south of the country, in Pasto, in Titiribe, in the coast, in Monteria, or in the eastern plains. No. The horses have some denominations in their layers that are scientific, that are studied, and that are the ones that correspond to a naming or write also about those layers of the horses. There we see very nice this lot of mares, and again with a thank you to the purebred Spanish horse breeder, one of the oldest breeders and with an extraordinary genetics, which is the only breeder that has the origin in the mares terna, is the San Esteban breeder. So friends, I hope that later we will not find how we are going to see it later and talk about the chestnut horses, the other colors, the live horses, all those layers that exist in the horses, as we can see those two black horses that are their discoloring at those ages very close to 5 and 6 years old, or this mare already entered in a descending age from 18, 20 years old downwards. I hope you have enjoyed all the images that we had to appreciate to explain the layer of thrush horses that appears technically summarized in this book The Horses and Their Colors, with a very special thanks to the breeding to the stud San Esteban. I want to invite you to be pending when we are bringing you all the summary of the other colors that we can also appreciate in the book, that are the chestnut and sorrel. So until a new program.